Chief Executive Officer answering to the GEF Council. The GEF mandate is to finance the incremental costs of projects related to the provision of global environmental benefits. The GEF is the largest public funder of projects to improve the global environment, and since 1991 has provided about $10.5 billion in grants, and which have leveraged $51 billion in co-financing for over 2,700 projects in over 165 countries. The institutional framework for the GEF, I was located at the GEF Secretariat, which is the operations portion here, and we funded projects that through GEF agencies, the implementing agencies, and these implementing agencies then would really carry out the projects on the ground. Now, the GEF Secretariat responds to the direction from the conventions and what's discussed in the GEF Assembly, and then there's a GEF Council that somewhat oversees and makes decisions about what goes on in terms of projects that get funded. We talked about implementing GEF agencies. The number is increasing over time. At the moment, the agencies include the 3 initial agencies of the World Bank, the UN Environmental Program, and the UN Development Program. And then there's the other 7 agencies, FAO, and other multilateral development banks around the world. Currently, the GEF is looking at increasing the number of implementing agencies, and for more information, you can certainly go to the website. This is listed on the bottom of the slide here at the official, the GEF.org website. Now, implementing agencies sometimes carry out projects directly in the countries with the country, and other times they will have executing partners who are also conducting quite a bit of work on the ground. And these can be ministries of agriculture or the environment, they can be departments in the countries, communities, private sector, NGOs, a wide range of entities that can actually execute on the ground. Now, the GEF has a direction for 4-year periods called replenishment periods. The GEF Assembly meets every 4 years, and they talk about goals. Everybody looks at the direction from the conventions, and eventually agree on a strategic plan, including pledges from donor countries. Currently, the GEF is in the 5th replenishment period, which is across the years 2010 to 2014. The replenishment period are often designated after the abbreviation of the GEF name, as in the title of the slide, GEF 5, and that means, when you see that, it means 5th replenishment period. If you see GEF-4, it means the 4th replenishment period. Now, the strategy document shown on this slide is included on your flash drive. It's quite interesting to look at the objectives of the different focal areas. The ones that are relevant here, as I mentioned, I was a program manager for the Land Use Change and Forestry program. That was $50 million. And then Sustainable Forest Management, RED Plus, Challenge Incentive looks at multiple benefits from sustainable forest management. And the pot was $250 million, which was the challenge incentive on top of a country's allocation. The land degradation focal area also has carbon benefits from the Convention on Combating Desertification, and all these items are talked about in this document. Various objectives include developing national forest inventories, or capacity building for local projects, or if the country has the inventory capacities, then they can apply to conduct projects that demonstrate good management practices. So I'll be giving 2 examples of projects, one funding the development of a regional forest inventory, and the other focused on good practices, but including improvements in inventory and monitoring systems for the project. Both of these projects can also provide lessons learned for future projects. I'd just like to emphasize that inventories can vary across the scales. I'm sure that Chaley touched on this, and the fact that inventories cover different sizes of areas for different purposes, and their resolution, which is sometimes called the grain, can differ. So countries need national level, countries conduct national level reporting for their greenhouse gas inventories, and they may conduct some sort of forced inventory to come up with the emissions and sequestration estimates to report at the national level. These are called enabling activities, the greenhouse gas reporting, and are handled a bit differently within the GEF than regular projects. Now, national level inventories can also inform project estimates. Say, if you're worried about leakage, if we have a project in one area, will it move the threats to carbon sequestration to another part of the country, would be known as leakage, and a more national level inventory will help identify those kind of issues. There's also project level inventory and monitoring, which occurs a more local inventory, so you'll have a more intense monitoring system. And for instance, one of the programs within the GEF, it's called the Small Grants Program, and these will be very small amounts of money going to, say, communities, so that families and communities can participate in better forest management for carbon benefits. And that can include some very localized type of inventories. Now, we also need to think about baselines for benefit estimates, but I'll talk about that a little later. Okay, moving on to one of the projects. One of the projects submitted and endorsed in GEF 5 is a landscape approach to management of peatlands, aiming at multiple ecological benefits. This is implemented by the UN Development Program in Belarus, with executing partners in the Ministry of the Environment, Agriculture, the National Academy of Sciences, and the private sector. So the total cost of the project is $13.2 million US, with $2.7 million investment in GEF grants. The objective of this project is to promote integrated management of agricultural and forestry peatlands at the landscape level, to conserve biodiversity, enhance carbon stocks, and secure multiple ecosystem services. It includes a demonstration. So they're working on rehabilitating areas of extracted peats, and this project focuses on the rehabilitated peatlands that were drained and used for agriculture and forestry. In the picture on the left, they're using heavy equipment to fill in ditches and affect water drainage, and on the right, this is a picture of the old-fashioned way to move peat around. So this project is looking to restore 2,000 hectares used for agriculture and 3,000 hectares of forested peatlands, with initial benefits estimates of about 70,000 tons of CO2 per year. Now, the GEF allows for direct and indirect effects of a project up to a default time period of about 20 years, but certainly that could be longer or shorter depending on what the project documents say. The direct effect is the number of years during the project, and indirect effect is the effects that continue to occur after the project actually closes. So if we look at 70,000 tons of CO2 benefits for each of 20 years, this project potentially could provide 1.4 million tons of CO2 benefits for the 2.7 million in GEF funding. So dividing these numbers, one comes up with, that's about $1.93, about $2 US tons per CO2 benefit. So that's a fairly good cost-effective project. Now, additionally, the project will improve the MRV system and methodology, as well as operationalize it. We'll look at policy frameworks development improved, and they'll look at creating conservation areas. So this example shows MRVs, good practice, and across the landscape benefits. Peatlands without trees hold a great deal of carbon, and ensuring that carbon is not lost can be a cost-effective investment. Now, this is a project, it's a 5-year project, so it plans to be completed by 2017. Now, the other project I wanted to mention is a regional approach for a regional resource for Congo Basin forests. So the title of this JEF4 project, Enhancing Institutional Capacities on Red Issues for Sustainable Management in the Congo Basin, includes Cameroon, Central African Republic, Democratic Republic of Congo, Equatorial Guinea, Gabon, and the Republic of Congo. It's implemented by the World Bank, that is the International Bank of Reconstruction and Development Unit. A total of $74.8 million, about $75 million US dollars are in this project, of which $13 million is JEF grant funded. Co-financiers include the Forest Carbon Partnership Facility, CBFF, that's the Congo Basin Forest Fund, World Bank Trust Fund, and Central Africa Forest Commission, COMAVAC. The objective is to strengthen the capacities of the Congo Basin countries on REDD+ issues and on forest carbon stock measurements in particular. So the Congo Basin store a significant amount of carbon, say 30 gigatons of carbon. And although the deforestation rate is currently low, the rates are expected to increase, driven by road development, agricultural expansion, and industrial logging activities. So the reason for this project is to try to start now to get some baseline estimates as to what is happening in this area. This regional integrated approach is seen as very positive to help influence the international climate negotiations. Well, that is for the countries that are involved, to help influence the international climate negotiations, and to combine resources for capacity building as well as field work. So the objectives of this project include improving knowledge and coordination on REDD+ in the Congo Basin, building technical capacities, including the collection of biomass data to develop biomass equations, and producing technical guidelines. This is quite a large project, as it seems, and much information can be found out about it further on other websites. Now, there's one other project that really is about tools. The GEF provided funding to have several tools being developed, and that project is called the Carbon Benefits Project. Now, these tools are currently being peer-reviewed, or I would say more about them. In fact, the reason the trip I'm going on while this workshop is occurring is for the purpose of peer-reviewing these tools from the JEF's Carbon Benefits Project. Now, one of the tools is mentioned as a greenhouse gas inventories tool, and that development group tends to focus on overall land-based greenhouse gas accounting and soil carbon. Now, the other tool was recently advertised on a listserv or two that I'm signed on related to the environment, and it has this name of MRB Tool for Carbon Management of Forests, and the group calls itself Carbon to Markets. I didn't want to say too much more about this because it's currently under peer review. I'm under the impression that tools may be available in draft form, but the peer review is to be an important part of the process in that development. So in summary, these are the websites I'm aware of for now, and there should be more information about these tools forthcoming in the future. So to finish with the JEF-related items, if you think you have a large project idea, or have specific questions that you would like to discuss with the JEF, the best contact within your country is the JEF's operational focal point. Each country has one, and the website has an up-to-date list. I show the website here. Contacts can suddenly change within a country, so please look at this list to stay up to date. Each country also has a political focal point, so look carefully, because you will want to speak with the operational focal point, or whoever they suggest you speak with. At the GEF, if your project focuses on carbon for climate mitigation or other uses, land uses like peatlands, then the current LULUCF program manager, who has succeeded me she's from the Forest Service, Dr. Mary Ann Burke is the person to call. This is her email, mburke, mburke1, mburke1 @jeff.org. And the SFM, Sustainable Forest Management, Red Plus Program Manager is Ian Gray, and this is his website. And I know we handle questions. When I was at the Jeff, we would get questions occasionally. And again, check out your operational focal point, or you can also ask for more information from these program managers. There are other relevant program managers, and you can look at the Jeff staff information on the website to find out how to contact them. So I focused on the Jeff because of my experience, but I'd like to emphasize there are many other organizations that deal with large projects. And many of these larger projects are often broken into smaller projects that are more manageable and that you might be more interested in. So do not hesitate to ask folks for more information. The Forest Carbon Partnership Facility, I'm just going to go down the list here and talk about the bullet points here. FCPF, it's a global partnership that complements the Framework Convention negotiations on REDD+ by demonstrating how REDD+ can be applied at the country level and by learning lessons from the early implementation phase. It has a readiness fund, which helps countries get ready for future systems of financial incentives for REDD+. The World Bank assumes the function of trustee, secretariat, and delivery partner. Now, the Inter-American Development Bank and UN Development Program are in the process of becoming delivery partners under the Readiness Fund, and there's quite a lot going on with that. Again, you can certainly look that up and get more information. Now, there's a second fund within FCPF called the Carbon Fund, which is now also operational. It will provide payments for verified emission reductions for REDD+ programs in countries that have made considerable progress towards REDD readiness. Moving on to the Forest Investment Program. This is a program within the framework of climate investment funds that operates in 8 pilot countries to achieve scaling up type financing and transformational impacts for REDD. So, in contrast, FCPF is about REDD readiness and some early work on being ready to work on true large projects. Forest Investment Program is then moving along, and it's about scaling up and many, many large projects, huge projects for REDD. Now, these funds are a global partnership of the African Development Bank, Asian Development Bank, European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, Inter-American Development Bank, and the World Bank Group. And again, please contact them for more information or look them up on the websites. Another program that's fairly large is the UN REDD program. It was launched in 2008, and it builds on the convening role and technical expertise of the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, the United Nations Development Program, and the United Nations Environment Program. And this too supports REDD+ readiness efforts. I've been talking a lot about public type financing, multilateral financing, or help, and their private sector is certainly available, and people are looking more and more at public-private partnerships. So that's another place to think about looking for information or funding. The 5th bullet on the Group on Earth Observations. This is an intergovernmental effort to coordinate efforts to build a global Earth observation system of systems, especially coordinating Earth observations like remote sensing for sustainable development and societal benefits. And there are a number of societal benefits areas included, such as climate, health, weather, and water. One relevant task that I'm quite familiar with is the Forest Carbon Tracking Task, and that is helping demonstrator countries with capacity building for national forest inventories. Now, this is an evolving task with much discussion about it becoming the Global Forest Observation Initiative. which would be open to additional countries. So this would be an effort that, both of these are an effort that would be more national level. Finally, there are national and local non-governmental organizations or civil society organizations that could be of interest. You might check for capacity building and funding. And I apologize if there are any specific groups or generic groups that I have omitted because I did not mean to. So in summary, many of these organizations are focused at helping countries with capacity building for inventories, and they may be in your country. And if so, these often include local measurements too or workshops, so please look around for events in your area. Now, some other important considerations for applying inventories and tools and projects. We've been discussing carbon benefits for climate change mitigation, but in forest or land management, we think about safeguards. Safeguards refers to the need to protect against social or environmental damage or harm. It's often used to talk about measures such as policies and procedures designed to prevent unintended consequences or undesirable outcomes of actions